Hello and welcome to this final exploring session on nature by Henry Medwall. We are 2/3 of the way through this morality play. Mankind is rapidly going down the plug hole of sin and iniquity, which is frankly where we like it, because the play just always gets so much more fun when the bad behaviour begins. It's been a nice gradual progression, some change of heart, then back again. Oh, he can't decide where he is going to land. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. It's going to end today with this wonderful team of people who are going to read through this work from around about 1490, sometime in the 1490s at any rate. We have reading today, Pride and Patience is...
Hello, my name is Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm in Hull.
Reading today, Bodily, Lust, Good Occupation and Chastity is...
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Amisu and I'm also living in Romford.
Today reading Sensuality and Abstinence is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Man today is...
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm coming to you from Germany.
Reading today, Wrath is...
Hi, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm also coming to you from Germany.
Reading today, Gluttony, Meekness and Liberality is...
I'm Lois Potter, settled in London.
Reading Envy and Reason today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I actually kept expecting you to say Pride and Prejudice at some point. I don't know why. I think it's just like, in my head, those go together.
Indeed. Other literary texts are available. Reading Worldly Affection and Charity today is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm in the northwestern United States.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading what few stage directions there are and trying to sort of generally keep us moving in the right direction as we head to the end of this tale. So where we're picking up in the play is, say, about maybe 1/3 of the way through the second part. It's in 2 parts. We've had some debates whether the 2 parts are on the same day or whether they happen over time. And there are some thoughts I might throw in about that later. But for the moment, mankind has gone off with Pride, probably to get his new clothes. He's got some ridiculous clothing on order with Pride, and they leave on stage Worldly Affection, who speaks thusly.
Marry I shall with all mine heart. This good fire and I will not depart, for very cold mine hands do smart. It maketh me woe begone. Get me a stool here, may ye not see? Or else a chair will it not be? Thou pilled knave, I speak to thee. How long shall I stand?
And having argued presumably with some unfortunate attendant in the great hall, enter Gluttony.
Let him stand with a foul evil. A stool or a chair, quitter, get him the devil. Well, you see, lo, every drivel nowadays, I warrant, must command as if he were a king. Let him stand on his feet with breeding.
What gluttony? I can tell thee one thing. In faith you will be shent.
Why?
My master hath sent Sensuality to seek thee all about the country. Spakest thou not with him?
Oh, yes, pardie, I know all his intent. And thereupon I am come here for to await. But wottest thou where our master is now?
Nay, I wot ne'er. I am not very certain, but Pride and he together be gone. He said he would come again anon, within an hour or twain. Tarry you here, and go not away. I will go break my fast, and I may, for I ate never a morsel this day.
And Worldly Affection goes out, leaving Gluttony alone on stage.
Ah, marry, that is a thing. Go when thou wilt, I will abide. My stomach he shall not rule or guide, that is now fasting. Nay, of all thing earthly, I hate to fast. 4 times a day I make repast, or thrice, as I suppose. And when I am well fed, then get I me to a soft bed, my body to repose. There take I a nap or twain. Up I go straight, and to it again. Though nature be not ready, yet have I some meat of delight, for to provoke the appetite and make the stomach greedy. After all this, needs I must sometime follow the wanton lust. It followeth naturally, for hot drinks and delicate refection causeth fleshly insurrection. Ye know it as well as I.
And here man enters. We can assume he's dressed up in his finery togs, so big laugh from the audience, fingers crossed. Plus bodily lust is presumably coming on with him around this time as well.
Troth, as ye say, I know it well.
What gentleman is this? Can ye tell?
Dost thou never?
No, by the bell, I saw him never before.
Is it our master?
Nay, by the rood, it is not he. Wouldst thou make me wooed?
Yes, I am the same.
Oh, I cry you mercy, I see it well now. Before I knew you not, I make God a vow, in earnest nor in game.
Why? Because I have changed mine array.
For that cause, trow ye? Nay, that is not the thing that can deceive me, be ye sure. But I pray you, who hath had you in cure since my last departing?
By my faith, a little season I followed the counsel and diet of reason.
There went the hair away. His diet, quotha, it may be verily, for ye be altered, marvelously altered, I would say. Alas, the while had ye no meat, as long as ye were under his diet?
Meat? Yes, I had some. Without it were on fasting days. Then he withdrew my supper always, and gave me never a crumb.
No force, hardly. Why would ye then favor him, as ye did, like a madman? Ye look now as it were a ghost. Had ye dwelt with him until this day, ye had been pined even away, as ye be now almost. Your flesh is gone every deal. Vengeance on the morsel that is left thereon.
Now talk of the remedy.
Marry, now must he eat and drink fast. Other remedy is there none.
Yea, but where is the meat? Now let us see.
Ye are passing hasty, Bensidy. First must ye go, whereas provision thereof is made. Let us go thither, and it shall be had.
But what is the mistress of the inn? A wedded woman or a virgin?
Neither of both, I wis.
No, but for a maiden she goeth.
Yea, for God that she doth, but yet she is none, by Jis.
No, what then?
Oh, I wis I not, but as men clatter, they say she is nupta mater, hardily a holy woman.
Well, thither we will, go we hence.
Sir, you will give me a license to sport me for a season.
Yes, for a while you will enow, but go not out of the way, I charge you, for hither will come anon all my company, as I suppose. Keep them together, for I purpose to come again anon, and show them my mind what I will do. And
mankind goeth out.
Marry, I shall do what I can then too, and yet it is hard for me to keep them together any while. But I shall tell you what, I had liever keep as many fleas or wild hares in an open lease as I must take that.
Enter wrath and envy.
Where be these knaves that make this array?
Marry, they begin that other way. Tell me whom you mean.
I trow thou scornest.
Nay, certainly. Howso be it, if I should not lie at the first blush, I assure you faithfully, I had forgotten you clean, because ye be thus defensively arrayed. What meaneth that? Are you afraid? Who hath you grieved?
Nay, I fear no man that beareth a head, yet I had liever that I were dead than that should be proved.
By my faith, You are wont to be as bold as it were a lion of Cotswold. But now to my question. What meaneth all this defensible array?
Marry, Sloth warned us too this same day, even sith it was noon that our master in reason should make a fray, and therefore he had us, without delay, to await on our captain.
Ah, now I know the matter right well, but what shall come thereof I cannot tell. It passes my brain. Our master will that we twain should tarry here till he come again.
What wilt thou do then?
Who I? Nay, care not for me. I will not come where strokes be. I am not so mad a man, and I wish it is not for any fear, but it is a thing that I can well forbear, and will as long as I can. Of lust and pleasure is all my mind, it longeth to me in property and kind. And if I shoot to the war, and lie in mine harness as other men do, with hunger and thirst a day or two, it should me utterly mar.
It were a great loss if thou were marred. Now, fly on the stark horse and coward, by cock's precious blood, it were no sin to slay such a knave. Hast not thou wages as other men have? And so few of us so good. Yet wilt thou fail at us at this need? Now whosoever shall quit my meed, I will no further go till I have slain him with mine own hand, though I should forswear the land, even when I have due.
And then goeth out bodily lust.
Hold him in search, you require. Alas, would you not at my desire do so much for me? I wish it would have done me more good to have seen the knave's hard blood than 20 shillings of fee.
We're just going to pause there before we go forward. Man is about to re-enter the room. There's a lot of comings and goings. We are re-entering the scene at a moment of muchness going on. We have the introduction of a new character. He's been set up quite a long time ago. We had all these 7 deadly sins were sort of given a name check much earlier in the text, but we get to meet Gluttony for the first time. We're meeting Wrath in his armor, and for the first time, bodily lust is not getting involved. And so the thing is, especially for those who are just joining us, is reason, the one on the other side of the debate between reason and sensuality. Reason is on the warpath. So there's rumors that he's getting a posse together and he's going to come and take out sensuality and all the bad people. So the bad people here are gearing up for a fight. So that's what, Wrath obviously is always gearing up for a fight, to be fair. But that's where a lot of this motion is coming in as we are sort of rejoining the action mid-flow. It's interesting, once again, we're having this undermining of reason is continuing when talking to man, of Gluttony just asking man, why aren't you eating? So, oh no, reason said I shouldn't eat too much. Yeah, don't listen to him. So, thoughts about any of the scenes or any of the people in this scene, the scene itself? Thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I find it interesting that Envy seems angrier than Wrath, but I don't know if that's just me. Is it the way it's written, or is it just like sort of, yeah?
Sarah?
I think that's my fault because I decided I was going to do Wrath as Brian Blessed. And then I suddenly realised that had been a really bad character choice because he's so jolly. So that was probably me. Sorry, I should have been more hostile.
Yeah, Lois?
Yeah, I think Roth probably comes in full armor or anyway, something military, because they comment on what he looks like. So he probably doesn't need to sound very belligerent anyway. He's going to look it. But I think what Envy is mad at is just bodily lust saying, sorry, this isn't my scene, because that's obviously sarcastic when Envy says, oh, it'd be really terrible if something happened to you,
Yeah, it's I'm wondering if Envy is just a more internal malice, whereas Wrath is perhaps more demonstrative. So Envy might seem that way. That it's a good point, because Wrath doesn't seem, Wrath seems to be just someone who likes a fight. That's not necessarily same as someone who is angry all the time, if that makes sense. Sarah?
Yeah, thinking about it from the psychological perspective as well. I mean, it could actually be in the writing, because if you think about it, anger is a kind of spontaneous emotion that you kind of tend to feel in the moment, and but it's not always negative. You know, there is such a thing as righteous anger that spurs you to do good things, whereas envy is one of those things that's kind of sits and rankles. So maybe it would actually be a more resentful and embittered characterization. Maybe.
Yeah, because envy, of course, obviously wants what everybody else has. So if bodily lust is getting off scot-free and also has quite a lot of fun by the looks of it, bodily lust is essentially the procurer of entertainments in the sort of connection between the allegory and the real world. So yeah, envy should sort of slightly hate him. I think there's a certain logic there as well. Elizabeth.
Yes, I was thinking about the differences between sensuality and bodily lust. And I was wondering how different they are. Because sensuality is the big player from the beginning, that's followed man from the start. Bodily lust has come into the narrative later. But I think sensuality is still, with reason, the bigger player.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Is that bodily lust is one of these peripheral characters who is connecting man with what was the name? Was it Margaret?
Marjorie.
Marjorie, of course, it was Marjorie. So it serves a sort of plot function rather than an idea function in the same way. So yeah, I think you're right. Sensuality is still the more central issue arising. Lynn, did I see a hand?
Yeah, just that. Yeah, to sort of bouncing off Elizabeth, sensuality is sort of more inclusive. So not just giving into sexual desire, but giving into desire for all kinds of pleasure, food, drink, excessive sleep, and as well as sex. So, and they seem to be, in the way this universe is constructed, they're kind of all connected, because gluttony says, I eat and I sleep, and then when I wake up, I kind of want to do the nasty, because they're all connected. He says something like that, as I remember. It followeth naturally, for hot drinks and delicate refection, whatever that is, causes fleshly insurrection, which, yeah, I think we can all guess what a fleshly insurrection is.
I've never heard it called that before. Yeah, it's interesting, because I did wonder slightly about bodily lust, whether bodily lust came on maybe earlier than man, because when gluttony calls on bodily lust, whether actually he has a slightly separate. I was slightly confused about who was talking to who at that entrance point, and it didn't quite seem to all work or make sense. Alan, then Lois.
I think the way to look at it is to say sensuality is effectively the gang boss, and the others are the juniors.
Lois.
Yeah, I was confused about the entrance too, but I think there's quite a lot of playing off the audience here, isn't there? I mean, I think, isn't it Worldly Affection who's still on the stage and says he doesn't want to leave because his hands are cold and there's a fire somewhere around that he can warm himself at, and that must be, part of the Great Hall. And then right at the end of this, I forget who says what, but anyway, why didn't somebody stop him from leaving? That's, again, to the audience, I think. Somebody has just sort of rushed out, and being told, when bodily lust goes out, Envy says, "Hold him in, sirs. Alas, would ye not, at my desire, do so much for me?" He must be talking to the spectators, I think.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of audience participation games, especially, the more bad people we get on stage, the more of this kind of back chat occurs, just simply because they have license to do that. They can do that in a way that others can't in the same way. Yeah, there's a lot of leeway there. Okay, let's move forward as there's more back and forth. Mankind's going to return to the stage for continued chattage with Envy and Wrath, who are still on. So we're going to see where that goes. Gluttony's returning. So it's all the sins are really carving up Man, I suggest, here. So Man returneth.
What? Ho, sirs, what meaneth this gear? Will ye slay each other here? No more of this work.
By the heart of God, and he had abided a little while, you should never have spoken with priest nor with clerk.
Who was that?
Your own minion, Bodily lost.
Why? What hath he done?
Even like a Lurden, he saith that ye have given him license to abide at home and keep residence, while we bear the burden and serve you now at your need.
He prayed me so in very deed within these 2 days. He said he would serve me with a good will, but of the wars he could no skill, nor knew thereof the ways. Howbeit I gave him thereof none answer.
No, but I am sure he will not come there, and now you may see that no man is so much to blame as yourself.
I?
Yes, by Saint Jane, no man but even ye, for I am well assured of one thing, ye gave him better clothing than ye did me, and better wages and fees also, and though I said but little there too, but suffered ever more, yet I disdained it ever in my mind, and thought that ye were to me unkind to set so great a store by a knave as he was. I would I had him here by the mass, and no man but but twain.
By my troth, this is ever thy guise. Look, by whom I set any price, him thou wilt most disdain.
By Christ, he can do none otherwise. But now, sir, is there any service that ye would command me?
Yeah, marry, there is. But my company dresseth them forward, passing slowly. I trow it will not be. Manhood, thou'rt good, I know for one.
Yea, by Christ, and they came every one I will not greatly fear.
By my troth, because he saith so, I shall tell you what I saw him do. I was present there, sir. It happened in Westminster Hall, even before the judges all. His hands were bound fast, and never upon him that ever God made dagger, sword, nor knife he had, and yet at the last he drave 12 men into a corner, and an hour after durst they not appear. How say ye hereto? And his hands had been at liberty. He would have put them in great jeopardy, it is supposed so.
Marry, there he quit him well. But where be mine other folk? Can ye tell?
And at which point then cometh in Gluttony with a cheese and a bottle.
Marry, here cometh one. Good fellowship, meseemeth it should be.
Sirs, God speed ye.
What tidings with thee?
I shall tell you anon, had I set a down gear. Marry, sir, I am come here for to attend upon you, for we shall a warfare, it is told me.
Yeah, where is thy harness?
Marry, here may ye see, here is harness enow.
Why, hast thou none other harness but this?
Why, what a devil harness should I miss without it be a bottle? Another bottle I will go purvey, lest that drink be scarce in the way, or happily none to sell.
Thou must have other harness than this, man.
Other harness? Nay, I shrew me then. I can no skill therein. Why, trowest you that I will fight?
Yea, so I trow.
Nay, by God Almight, thereof will I none. I was never wont to that gear. But I may serve to be a victualler, and thereof shall ye have store, so that I may stand out of danger of gunshot, but I will come no nearer. I warn you that before.
Now, such a knave I betake to the devil. This is even such another drivel as was here Willier. They be 2 knaves anointed. I fear me, sir, ye shall be disappointed. I like not this gear.
Oh, I had forgotten. I make God a vow. Sir, my fellow ease commandeth me to you.
Commandeth thee to me.
You to me.
Me to thee.
commandeth you to him, I would have said.
Why cometh he not hither?
Oh, by God, for he's afeard, and lieth sick in his bed. He took such a conceit when he heard of this gear, that for thought and very fear, I ween he will be dead.
And he were hanged, it were no reek. I pray God the devil break his neck, and all such as he is.
Well, let us suffer for a while. I will go walk hence 1/2 mile, and for all this, happily all this gear shall not need, howbeit that I doubt, and dread the worst as wise men do. Manhood, come thyself with me.
And I too, sir?
Yeah, pard, wouldst thou be prayed there too? Then go without man. Wait, that's a stage direction.
That's the stage direction, my bad. Then go without man, gluttony and wrath, leaving envy on stage.
Now he would have a war or strife. I pray God send him a shrewd wife, and then he shall have it now. But I shall tell you, sirs, as for me, I am none of them, so multi thee. I may say to you, I will no such reckonings abide. God's body, here cometh pride, as crank as a peacock. And as soon as he and I meet, without he stand right upon his feet, he shall bear me a proud mock.
And indeed, pride is entered.
What tidings, sir? Can any man tell?
Yea, marry, that can I do as well as any that was in field. Ye have tarried so long about your gay gear that the field is done, or ye come there.
Done, marry, God shield.
It is done without fail, but which of them hath won the battle, I cannot tell you certain.
Thou were not there, it seemeth, thereby.
Not I there, quoth they. Yes, hardly, and that to my great pain. But as soon as the battles joined together, I came straight my way hither for to tell tidings.
What the devil tidings canst thou tell?
Marry, I can show you nothing of the battle, but of many other tidings. Ye are out of conceit, I tell you, forever, because ye did not your endeavor at this great voyage, insomuch that ye are like to lease both your office and all your fees, and put clean out of wages.
That is not true, as I suppose.
Sir, and it be not. Take my nose and my head also. Your office was given, and I came hence.
Marry, that was a very short sentence, and I not called thereto. Now, envy, what counsel wilt thou give me?
By my troth, pride, thou mayst believe me, if I were in thy case, I would withdraw me for a season, though it be neither felony nor treason, nor yet wilful trespass. Yet the same is worst of all, for every knave will thee call a coward to thy face.
I am unhappy. I see it well. For the expense of mine apparel toward this voyage, what in horses and other array hath compelled me for to lay all my land to mortgage. And now, when I have all do and lose mine offices and fees also for my true intent, I may say that all my cost and all my time is evil lost in service that I have spent. Well, whatsoever betide me for a season, I will hide me after thy counsel. And sith it will no better be, farewell. I take my leave of thee.
Now, gentle pride, farewell.
And exit pride.
Alas, I had no good fellow here to bear me company and laugh at this gear. This game was well found.
And we'll just pause there before the entrance of sensuality. So it's interesting. Your pride comes in, having, preparing for a fight, and envy says, "Oh no, you missed it. Battle's over." It took me a while to figure out that it's not over, or that I was saying, going, has a battle somehow happened while he was on stage and he saw it? No, hang on, that makes no sense. But no, he's just making pride afraid of everything, basically. Thoughts, Lois?
Well, I mean, he tells Pride that he's lost his job. I mean, that that he's been sacked for not turning up at the battle. I mean, this is just typical envy, you know, wanting to make everybody miserable. It's supposed to be the one sin that has no pleasure at all in it.
Yes.
In fact, he does seem to be having some pleasure at the end, thinking he's really wrecked somebody else's life.
The joys of yeah, that. Yes. It's interesting. I like the way they talk about Sloth not making it. Just go, yeah, he's sick. He's sick. I've got a note from the doctors. He couldn't make it today. Forgot his gym kit. You know how it is. So it's this thing of setting up for a battle. I wondered whether they when man exits that is to fight at that point or not, and we may find out more definitely in a moment. Other thoughts, Lois?
Yeah, something that puzzles me is that I think when man made his first entrance, he was wearing this new suit we've been hearing so much about, and yet very little is made of it. I mean, Gluttony says he doesn't recognize him, and man says, oh, it's my new clothes, and Gluttony says, no, it isn't, it's because you're so thin now. And that's the last we hear of these clothes, which ought to be a real coup de théâtre, but aren't.
Maybe it's just simply it's all why overplay a visual gag? You know, maybe it's hilarious. You know, you come in wearing a funny hat. Hats are funny. You come in wearing a full ridiculous costume. Big laughs. Big laughs. Eric.
I was going to say that basically, I think like envy and wrath are kind of like, if this was like staged or something, I can imagine them being sort of like brothers or like two sides of the same coin against everybody else. So they just can't like, they sort of can't stand other people. But then sort of they just end up infighting. So ultimately lose the war because they just kind of, you know, can't bear any other people. They think that they're so much better than everybody else.
Helen, then Lynn.
I see practically everybody in this scene wearing armor of sorts, including possibly man. Certainly the household would have had a back and breast and a helmet and possibly some sort of pike for every male active member of the household. By law, they would have had it in stock in the household. So there would have been no difficulty about fitting out an entire acting company in armor.
Yeah, I'm interested in Gluttony's armor, or for that matter, his weaponry. You know, the idea, you know, when it's a cheese and a bottle. I don't know. Can if it was a ham, I could go with it as a giant club or something. You know, I'm trying to figure out the offensive capability of a giant cheese. Lynn, then Alan.
I was just going to observe that it's Envy's characterization is really interesting. That the other vices or deadly sins seem to be kind of working together to undermine man, but envy can't even get along with the other deadly sins. He just hates everybody, even wrath, who I think Eric's characterization is two sides of the same coin, I think is useful. Or, you know, Sarah was saying there's spontaneous rage and there's simmering resentment. And that's wrath and envy. But yeah, this if you are, you know, if this is working on you as an audience member, you are really seeing how poisonous it is to have that resentful, envious, malicious mindset, how that really divorces you from any kind of relationship at all.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about vices generally, is that they struggle to stay together in so many morality plays and interludes that we've looked at. They always end up fighting, and then one of them knocks their heads together so that they're unified for just long enough for bad things to happen. But they just as often tear themselves apart as they are. I mean, you've got to remember that they don't really have on stage many antagonists. You know, Reason is building an army somewhere. And apart from innocency, there hasn't actually been an opposing side throughout much of this. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, I would basically see it as a falling out among thieves, with all of the vices effectively fighting each other. And in Roth's case, possibly fighting himself if he can't find anyone better to fight. And as to the arming of gluttony, I would suggest an Edam cheese and a baguette is probably a good prop gag.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to figure out the best form of cheese for attack. We all know what's the best for defense, but you know, Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to say one of those massive waxed cheeses that you get like at is it Neal's Yard, the cheese place? I can't think what it's called now, but there's one in Borough Market, and they've got these massive waxed cheeses that look like they weigh about 10 kilos. I reckon one of those would be quite useful in a battle.
I was a shield.
Yeah, you could actually. Yeah, you could.
The bottle is probably the better offensive.
The bottle is probably, yeah, but you could use it like a cannonball and like fling it at people. I don't know. Or maybe it's the smell. Maybe it smells so bad that you just waft it near. Maybe it's a really old Stilton, and you like, yeah, exactly. I was going to say though, going back to Lois's point about the costume, and then what you said, Robert, I do feel that that's a visual gag, because man only has that. He literally says, "Why? Because I have changed mine array." And I mean, if you do that as a line out to the audience, that is literally all you need to make that joke, to make the entire audience like fall about. Because if he comes on and he's all dressed in his, what we were talking about yesterday, with his slashed doublet and his and everything puffed through, I mean, he's just going to look hilarious. So I think that's again, I think that's probably quite sophisticated a decision on the part of the playwright. I think he really knows what he's doing, this guy, because he doesn't over egg that particular pudding. He just leaves it, for the visual gag.
I have to say the way I would use the gag is, which I don't know if the play is going to afford us, is that if mankind keeps encountering a different person, and that you can just do the same gag several times, and it potentially, and it's as much to do with whether man just goes, "Oh, did you notice? It's just something I threw on." It could actually be very underplayed as well. It depends. It's very much down to the costume side of things to make that gag land. Okay, we need to move forward. So we have Envy. Looks like he's continuing with the domino underminingness, perhaps. I don't know, having made everybody's life slightly depressing. Enter Sensuality. Let's see how Sensuality and Envy stack up against each other.
Yes, ye lust to play the knave, some manner of company ye may have here within this ground.
Some I can think, young or old, and else it were a small household, as any might be found.
It is not small, the company showeth well, but methought thou wert about to tell of some merry jest, or some merry game at my coming.
Yea, hardly it is a game for a king when he lusteth best, to laugh for his disport and solace. Sir, I shall tell thee this is the case. Right now, as I stood in this place, and never a man with me, in came Pride, garnished as it had be, one of the royal blood. It grieved me to see him so well beseen, but I have abated his courage clean for a little season. By the rood, I have given him a checkmate, for I bear him a hand that he came too late, and that the field was done, and how his office was given away, because he failed our master that day. I made him to believe so. And when I had told him all this tale, and anon he began to wax all pale, full of care and woe, and now he hideth himself for shame. I gave him mine advice to do the same, and so he's gone.
Now, on my face, this was madly do. But in faith, what moveth thee thereto?
Marry, 'cause I had none, but only that it is my guise, when I see another man rise or fare better than I, then I must chafe and fret for ire, and imagine with my desire to destroy him utterly. But now in earnest sensuality, tell me when this fray shall be. I pray thee heartily.
What? Against reason?
Yea, the same.
Tush. May be agreed in pain of shame. Good company they keep.
Agreed, quadra. In the mere name, marry, sir, that were a game to make some of us weep.
Weep or laugh, man, so it is. But who, trow ye, is the cause of this?
Who?
Age, the devil in quell.
Why, is age now come in place?
Yeah, and that we may spy by his face, and ye mark it well. His stomach fainteth every day, his back crooketh, his head waxeth grey, his nose droppeth among, his lust is gone, and all his liking. I see it well by everything. He may not live long, and all maketh age, as I said before. He is the doer. What trow ye more this age hath done?
What?
By my faith, he hath brought in reason, in such wise that at no season nothing can be wrought, but reason must be called thereto. I fear me he will us all undo within a few days. As soon as gluttony had espied all this gear, he would not abide, but went even his ways. A master prayed him to tarry a season. Nay, nay, quoth he, now have I done. I may no longer tarry, for age and I may not together dwell. And straightway he departed, fair and well. Bodily lust stood by, and saw that gluttony would needs be gone. Have with thee gluttony, quod he, anon, for I must go with thee, so that two be gone together. Came there none of them both hither?
Never one that I see.
Well, they be gone some other way, to get a new master as soon as they may. They cannot be unpurveyed, and as soon as they two were gone, our master sent the covetise anon, and heartily him prayed to await on him well for a year or two, and he hath promised him so to do, as for a year or twain, but reason may not know thereof.
Reason, quod he? No, no, so I trow, he will that disdain. But where hath covetise been many a day?
He dwelt with a priest, as I heard say, for he loveth well men of the church, and they him also. And lawyers eke, when they may tend thereto, will follow his counsel.
So men say there, as I dwell. But sensuality canst thou tell now in this case, what were best for us to do?
Harry, I hold it best that we go hereby to some place, and assemble together all our company, to hear their minds by and by, and every man's opinion. What shall we best for to do?
By my troth, and it be so, I hold it well done.
And they exit, and the scene closes. So no battle, people. There was no battle. It all happened off stage, and it was all amicably done to a degree. And so whilst some of the sins have been cast off, he has finally called on covetous. And here we get self-depreciating humour. Because what does it say? Covetous often dwells with a priest and lawyers. This is performed for the Archbishop of Canterbury, and it is written by a lawyer. So that is a joke of oh good, we can laugh at ourselves, ha ha ha, while instituting no actual institutional reform. Man suddenly aged. He's suddenly just grew up. He's barely out of his silly clothes, but he's suddenly an old man. And just reminds us of what this play is doing. It's taking us through man's journey through the potential sins. So when you're very young, you go into drinking and sex, and then you get into fighting and greed, and greed leads into eventually covetousness and etc. So yeah, the journey continues. The journey continues. Thoughts.
Somebody predicted this because I said something yesterday about it seems awfully early for man to be reforming, and someone said, "Oh, he'll probably backslide and then take up new sins that are more associated with human maturity, like covetousness." So here we are doing exactly that.
And
And-
yeah. Sorry, Gavin.
Yeah, this is the first moment that you could say it doesn't sound quite as much like a pre-Reformation play as we were talking about it yesterday. It has this critique of the clergy where covetousness is associated with the priesthood. So there's a critique of the church and the Catholic Church, one assumes. So that kind of internal criticism was evidently going on. So that's sort of an interesting thing historically.
Well, it's one of the licensing that you sort of get with household drama is you are allowed to critique what the household represents. You can critique your master. You are supposed to. You are obliged to point out when your master is in the wrong. There are checks and balances on that. But because he's making this critique in a sort of permitted way, it doesn't, as I was saying earlier, it doesn't institute any change. It's not like it's a serious rebuke. And I think it's also telling that covetousness will never appear. We do not meet covetousness. We have a constant mention that covetousness happens somewhere else.
We hear so much about him, and it's not an onstage character. That's really
that's not much of a spoiler because we are very much into the last moments.
I just didn't have to look at it.
Yeah, Eric.
I find it interesting that this is obviously like a sort of internal criticism that we've been talking about, but also it's kind of like it's I think we said yesterday or almost a century before the Three Ladies of London, where you've got like all the sins of like is it Three Ladies of London, or you've got simony and all that, like usury and stuff, sort of this, like where that is a very clear sort of criticism on the church from other players, not people who are doing it for a household.
Well, I mean, we have got the criticism of the church. It doesn't have to be a reformation, active reformation. Some of the biggest critiques of the church comes from Catholics. Later on, John Hayward, just at the height of the Reformation, just really getting going, is right some very anti abuse of the clergy. If the clergy goes too far, then they'll do it. Chaucer spent half his career attacking the church at the time. Minor criticism is fine. This isn't asking to change the world at all, really. All of this is expected of people, so long as you eventually repent and give some money to the church and do some good deeds, then you'll be fine. It's expected. No one's perfect. Helen, I thought I saw a hand.
Yes, I was just going to say, though I think it's probably already been said, that there is an enormous distinction made between criticising the church for its doctrinal stand and criticising individual venal ministers of the church. And criticising your vicar for any of the 7 deadly sins, as if you look in the records of the church courts, was a constant. I mean, there seems to be barely a vicar that wasn't at some stage drunk, lecherous, thieving, lazy. I mean, they're not saying the services, they're living with women, they're drunk on, in all the time. Though, of course, we only hear about the bad ones. But it doesn't mean that the doctrine is in any way touched.
Yeah. It's established doctrine that the church is against all of these things.
Yeah. Also, the sacraments are not affected by the fact that the clergyman is a sinner. So a drunken, lecherous priest can consecrate the wafer and distribute it with exactly the same efficacy as the purest soul alive.
Mm. And hear confession and give you penance and all of that. Yeah.
Because otherwise, the church is really in a mess.
Yes, quality control on the clergy is it's just a few rotten apples, people. Just a few rotten apples. That's what it is.
Which may actually be true, because the records never record the good ones.
Right. It's taken for granted that you will do your job as a member of the clergy.
Yes.
So that's not noteworthy.
Yes, it's only the bad ones that get into the church courts.
And I think we've gone on a really a great tangent, but remember, this is just one very, very light gag that is clearly there so that the Archbishop of Canterbury can go ha 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 ha, and look to be so wonderfully self-deprecating. Any other thoughts before we move forward, Eric?
I do like how, like, you know, suddenly when sensuality comes in, and obviously it's sort of maybe a sin that is older, or I don't know, maybe sort of just more important, I guess, I don't know. Envy sort of goes, yeah, so I'll cooperate with you now. Like, sort of, I'm scared of reason, I'm scared of age, so I will come with you now.
Yeah, well, I think that this thing is that sensuality isn't strictly a sin. You know, if we're going again with the idea that reason is the mind and this is the body, you know, sensuality is more likely to go for sin. You know, you have to construct an intellectual argument to, you know, reason isn't doing that to head towards sin. So there is a slightly different character to what's going on with sensuality. I'm really quite interested to see where sensuality is placed at the end of the play. I'm quite curious now. Any other thoughts before we move on? Man is about to enter, and with Reason. So Reason, who we haven't seen for a while. So enter Man and Reason.
Sir, I have oft times you advised to live virtuously, and showed you the way. And that notwithstanding ye have me despised, and followed sensuality many a day, will ye so continue, yea or nay? If you will purpose yourself to amend, it is time, for your life draweth fast at the end.
I cannot, though I would, for age hath waned me clean therefro. And yet, Reason, when ye me told of this gear many day ago, I thought little I should have come here to, but had of your words great scorn and disdain. Would God that my life were to begin again.
Speak not thereof, that may not be. A thing done cannot be called again, but the thing that most feareth me on your behalf, I tell you plain, is that ye would in no wise abstain from sinful lusts, as I will you to do, till now that age compelleth you thereto.
That is full true, without feigning. As long as mine appetite did endure, I followed my lusts in everything, which now, by the course and law of nature, and not of my policy or good endeavour, is taken from me for evermore. And so can I deserve no meed therefore. But notwithstanding this mine abusion, I trust that by the help of your good advice, I may be made the child of salvation.
Yes, and ye will, sir, on warranties, so that ye utterly forsake and despise all your old service in will and deed, and do by my counsel.
Yes, have ye no dread?
Then my soul for yours I lay to wed. Ye shall do well, have ye no mistrust. And first, to begin with, you forbid all manner of despair. And secondly, you must put to your mind and goodwill to be recured of your great excess, for without your help it cannot be, doubtless. As in this example, If so be the patient of himself be willing to have any remedy, it is a great furtherance to that intent, so that to the precepts of physic he apply. And whoso doth the contrary, no marvel truly, though he miscarry. What, should I bring any more examples for so plain a thing?
It shall be no need, as in this case. I know right well what you mean thereby, and that will I follow by God's grace.
Then, as I told you, it shall be no mastery yourself to comfort, and to have good remedy against the great surfeits that thou hast done, by which thou hast deserved endless damnation. But do as I shall tell thee, and have no dread. And for to give thee medicines most according against thy sores, do by my rede. Look what disease is hot and brenning, take ever such a medicine as is cold and working, so that the contrary, in all manner of wise, must heal his contrary, as physic doth devise. Right, so whoso lusteth from sin to arise, where he hath in pride done any offence, he can be helpen thereof none otherwise, but only by meekness, that is the recompense. Again, wrath and envy, take charity and patience, take alms deed again, the sin of covetous, and to repress gluttony, acquaint ye with abstinence. Again, foul lust of body, take chastity and continence. Much sin groweth by sloth and idleness, and that must be eschewed by men of good business. Lo, these be preparatives most sovereign against thy sores, which be mortal, unless that these medicines to them be lain. When thou hast received these preparatives all, I will come again, if thou me call, and order thee further after my mind.
Yeah, but where shall I these preparatives find?
Thou shalt them find within thine own breast. Of thee it must come, it must be thy deed, for voluntary sacrifice pleaseth God best. Thou canst not thereof have help or need, but if this gear of mine own heart proceed.
Well, I shall endeavour me to the uttermost. Until I've found them, I shall never rest. But how shall I know them? That what I know, I pray you show me that before your departing.
It needeth not thereof to inquire. Thou shalt know them at the first meeting. Of two contraries there is but one learning. That is to say, when thou knowest well that one, the contrary is known anon.
And reason goeth out, and meekness cometh in, or to put it another way, virtue number 1, please. Enter meekness.
Whoso wotteth histories of Scripture well shall find that for pride and presumption Lucifer, which sometime was a glorious angel, for that his offense had such correction that both he and eke many a legion of his order was cast down to hell, by rightful justice perpetually there to dwell. Remember also Adam, the first of our line, what pain he suffered for pride and disobedience. Causeth he not a great decay and ruin in all the progeny for the same offense? In such wise that he and all that were born since be utterly disherited and put from paradise. And so we be made thrall unto sin and vice. And lost should we be all of very justice, now had be that God of his merciful goodness did us soon after with his own blood main prize, and us redeemed from pains endless, so that we do not disobey or transgress his high commandments, but demean us well after his laws while we here dwell. And forasmuch as man's nature is frail, and lightly to sin will assent, either of purpose or unwitting peradventure, there the said good Lord hath him sent against every sin a remedy convenient. For he ne would have one soul to be lore, whom he hath dear bought, as I said before. The root of all sin is pride, ye know well, which is mine adversary in all that he may, Where I am in place, he may not dwell. His malicious power I can right well allay, and teach every creature the remedy and way how to subdue pride, which no man can do without that I, Meekness, must help thereto.
Then your help and counsel is necessary to me, whereof I pray you with all heart's affection.
Already at hand, whosoever it be that lusteth to have me for his consolation.
I myself have sinned in pride and elation. Show me your counsel, what way shall I take, a due satisfaction for that sin to make?
Thou must, before all thing, set little prize by thine own self, and take no heed whether the people do thee praise or despise. Be thou meek in heart, in word and in deed. Think not that thou wouldst any man overlead. Be soft and lowly in speech to every wight, and use none array that staring is to sight. Lo, in these three things only standeth pride, if thou commit the least of them three.
From this day forth, I will set them aside and follow the counsel that ye give me.
Do so, and I will clearly discharge thee. As for the sin of pride, my soul for thine, thou shalt be all whole if thou take this medicine.
And then Meekness goeth out.
Yes, I shall take it. Think not the contrary. Now am I well eased, yet have I not done all.
Enter virtue number 2, please. But we'll pause there for a moment first. So we've got the anti-pride. We've got the anti-pride vaccine has entered the room. I get the impression that we might get 6 more of these. I don't know if that's that we haven't seen all of the sins on stage, so we might not get all of them of the anti sins. So we'll see how that goes. Any thought, man? How are you finding your instruction? Because Reason obviously gave you a bit of a lecture, and then you learnt a bit from Meekness. So how are you feeling at the moment?
It's very classroom, isn't it? It's kind of. It's just by listening, I'm suddenly convinced. I mean, not suddenly, but I've grown old, and I don't actually fancy being lusty anymore. I don't actually fancy being prideful anymore. So now it seems really easy to listen to the virtue. I'm sorry, I sound very cynical saying that, but it almost feels like that.
Taking a late online course in virtue. Sarah.
Yeah, I said yesterday that one of the things I was enjoying about this play was the fact that it didn't seem to be too preachy. And I'm I'm wondering if I spoke too soon. I'm kind of hoping that they're not all gonna come on one after the other, because if they do, we're gonna be here some time, and it would just be such a shame.
Yeah, I think you may be disappointed. I think very much a late onset virtue disorder, and we're going to get quite a lot of this. Helen.
I was very struck with Reason. The first, right at the beginning of Reason's long speech, the first to begin with, you forbid all manner of despair. I mean, this is the sin of despair is a tremendously prevalent sin. And I think that's a tremendously important a forbidding for both for mankind, for man, and even, oh Lord, I'm sounding preachy here myself, even for us. Build esperandum est.
Yes, the sin of one hope of ultimate giving into despair is the one you really can't come back from. That's the thing that got Judas in the end, according to various things. I saw lots of hands earlier. Just remind me, Alan, was you wanting?
Yeah, I was just thinking that yet again, as we had at the end of the first part, we've got a screeching U-turn, of which even the current government would be proud. You know, the whole thing is turned on a sixpence.
Mm. And there's no argument on that. I mean, at least with the first half, it wasn't so much because he hadn't fallen very deep. It wasn't that much of a U-turn. He just, gone out drinking, had a hangover, and went, maybe I shouldn't do this. And whereas here, he was about to have a battle. No battle. He just meets up with reason and says, shall we shake hands? And, go in for tea. And it is a massive off-stage U-turn to lead to this. But then he has also completely changed himself as well, because, he's no longer wearing his amazing clothes. He's an old man. Eric.
I was going to say two things. One, I find it interesting that Meekness doesn't blame Eve for man's fall, like sort of, as Adam and so on, which is sort of what the church often does in scripture, I think. And second, that Sensuality's prediction came true. Because oh yeah, I will have him till he's 40, and then, you can have him later.
Mm. So yes, it's a part exchange program, isn't it? Sarah.
Going back to what Helen was saying about reason just having like really good salient points that are still salient today. That was right at the beginning of the exchange, and then right at the end of the exchange, you've got reason saying basically about how from two contraries there is but one learning. That is to say, when we know as well that one, the other contrary is known anon. And I just that was what struck me, because I'm like, yes, that is absolutely true. You can learn from example, but you can also learn by seeing what someone else has done and doing the exact opposite. And I just thought that was a really bit of good wisdom there as a parting shot. And it's like, I almost kind of wish that the playwright had kind of condensed all the wise stuff just into reason, and just like, said, you've got this really cool character here who's got all the wise stuff, and if you follow him, you'll be fine. Because then we could have maybe circumvented what I think is probably coming.
Yeah,
but,
I'm sure in production we might consider a lot of blue pencil here. This is the part of the player I'm sort of feeling it's going to get very blue, in a good way. Lois.
Yeah, I agree that a lot of what Reason says is really very good. What's sort of surprising is that he does start out by saying, I forbid despair, because mankind hasn't really seemed to be in a state of despair. I mean, you kind of need something like the thing that happens in Dr. Faustus, or in a lot of plays, actually, where, a vice or a devil presents him with a halter and a knife and suggests suicide, because that's usually the sort of symbol of despair. And, as everybody always said, that by committing that particular sin, you also prevent yourself from being able to repent of it, because once you've committed it, you're dead, so you can't repent.
Yes, because 20, 30 years later, Magnificence will be doing that with the attempted suicide and the halter and sudden saviour away from despair, and I think the connection with Dr. Faustus is an interesting one as well. It does seem that Marlowe definitely knew his moralities quite well. Whether he knew this one or not is harder to tell, but there's probably others, even more of these about than this, but the way some of those sins are charactered is really interesting on that front. I see more hands. I saw Lynn and then Sarah.
I have several thoughts. I thought it was very interesting that Reason said, look for the answers in your own breast. The sins seem to be something outside of man, but look for the opposites of them inside you. That's a really interesting formulation, particularly since supposedly we all carry sin around with us. Since Augustine came up with the idea of original sin, it's like it's handed down. We're born with it. It's in our spiritual DNA to be corrupt, but Reason is telling man to look for virtue in his breast. So that's really interesting, kind of more optimistic than you might expect. And my other thought is that even though having the virtues parsed out, oh, first we talk to meekness and then we talk to charity. Yeah, I can see how that might get a little preachy, but it's instructive because it kind of hints at what the playwright, or perhaps the culture that produced the play, how it hierarchized virtues and vices. In Dante, pride is the bottom. Pride is the sin that's kind of the source of all other sins, as this text also expresses. But in Piers Plowman, which is earlier than this, but definitely post-plague, there's a section in that poem that deals with the 7 deadly sins, and lust gets like 2 lines and pride gets like 4, and greed gets like 50 or 100. In an economy of extreme scarcity, greed is more harmful than pride. So how sins function in different cultural circumstances is just interesting to me.
And actually, it's a good note when we talk about, meekness comes on and then they're going to do a speech and then they do a speech. I think that here the thing is to give everyone an intention here for what's coming next. Is as we read the next speeches, is remember, as charity or good occupation or patience or liberality, any of these people, remember, you're trying to persuade man, you're not just saying these things. You believe these things, and you're trying to convince man. So you've got to convince Tamara, this aging man, sitting there playing with her cat. And you need to persuade her. So don't fall into the trap because these characters are worthy. That maybe we should say them a bit flat, because sometimes we kill a speech. Because we think it should be dull, because we think this play is dull, that maybe it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That doesn't mean it isn't, but we can try and fight for our right to be virtuous. Right. So we have charity and man now. So enter virtue number 2, please.
There is no living physician, no apothecary, that can devise so sovereign cordial against the sore of envy, which is mortal. No man living, I you ensure, without my help may undertake that cure. For I am called Charity, the salve for that sickness, whom the Apostle Paul commandeth singularly in divers of his epistles. I can well repress the rancor of envy, and give therein good remedy.
Then is your counsel to me full necessary. If ye be charity, ye are bound, doubtless, to have some compassion of your neighbour's distress.
Why, hast thou been envious before this day?
Yes, as God knoweth well, and that I rue sore.
Well, this must be the remedy, mark what I say. There is no sin that displeaseth God more than doth the sin of envy, and therefore, if thou wilt thine own soul safeguard, be thou never envious from this day forward. Also, that sin is to man unnatural, more than any other, in mine opinion. For all other sins, mark therein well, a man committeth with some delectation. But envy is full of pain and passion, and tormenteth himself with sorrowful sadness, as he seeth his neighbor's prosperity or gladness. He is never glad, nor taketh any solace, but at his neighbor's harm, lost, or heaviness. He speaketh sometime fair before a man's face, and yet within his heart he is full of doubleness. For behind his back he will never cease with slanderous words to appair his good name, and many a falsely doth he report for the same. Ye know, sir, whether it be thus or no. And now another while to speak of remedy. If ye will be holpen, sir, thus must ye do. First, before all things, love God entirely. Next, that thy neighbor love as thine own body. That is to say, thou must thee to him behave and do him such courtesy as thou wouldst of him have. Observe these two things, and do no more in recompense of thy great trespass, touching the sin of envy, rehearsed before.
To observe them well, God send me his grace, and I thank you for your comfort and counsel in this case. I shall myself endeavour according thereto.
God send thee his grace well so to do.
And charity goes out, and patience comes in.
The remedy of wrath and outrageous ire must needs come of me, and none otherwise. For I am called Patience, which quencheth the fire and flames of wrath. It is also my guise, by soft words and sufferance, to overcome mine enemies.
Now, welcome, Patience, for whom I have sought. Help me with your counsel for his love that all wrought.
This is my counsel. If thou wilt withstand thy ghostly enemy and this temptation, thou must have me, Patience, ever ready at hand, specially in suffering of worldly tribulation. Remember how Christ died in the time of his passion. There mayst thou learn how to be patient in any adversity that to thee shall be sent. And yet there may be no comparison between the least part of his pain and the great wrong that to thee can be done. Wherefore thou, wretch, shouldst not disdain, but gladly thou shouldst thyself refrain from ireful passions, as I said before, so thou shalt have a reward in heaven therefore.
It is my full mind and intent hereafter to do as ye me advertise.
Now, he that all goodness to us hath sent, send you his grace to demean you in that wise.
And Patience exits.
I shall do my good will on warrantize. Now, who can me best direct my slothful idleness for to correct?
And good occupation cometh in.
Sin of sloth I can well repress, and thou shalt teach thee to do the same.
How should I do it?
By mean of me, good business, and so am I called, for that is my name. Idleness is never without sin or blame. By mean thereof much sin cometh in, for it is the very mother and mistress of sin. In eschewing thereof thou must ever use some good occupation in body or mind. And if thou do this, my counsel refuse, so that the devil in idleness thee find, then according to his property and kind, he laboureth fast by mean of temptation, to bring thy soul unto endless damnation. Therefore do some good occupation away, as well with the body as with the mind inward. And if thou do not this counsel obey, thou shalt thine own soul greatly in jeopard. On the other side thou mayst be no coward, nor fearful of penance or of other deed, or other good deed, sith thou shalt be sure to have heaven to thy need.
This counsel is good, I thank you therefore. My mind is well eased therein, be ye sure.
Is there anything else that I can do more?
None to my knowledge, for ye have done your cure.
See that ye wisely now put in your...
And out goes good occupation, and we'll pause there, having had 3 in a row. They are quite different. I was putting some jokey things in the chat. You know, Patience is talking about soft words, and you know, the tonally. Whereas good occupation seems like might be doing an exercise class. You know, it's much more up there. You know, do something, get going, get out there. And so there is all sorts of little bits of difference between them, it was that bit with charity as well, because of course we've got the anti-envy, we got the anti-wrath, we got the anti-sloth. Yeah, they do have different characters, and you know that is nice. That does mitigate some of the worthiness to it of all. Any thoughts?
I think that the play is interesting how the new vices and virtues have come in from the beginning. I think I've found a very different change of pace from the beginning of the play, which was I think quite slow. It's sped up a bit now. And I do like the introduction of the new vices and the virtues to man, because makes man more around his character.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a bit late in the day that we're getting these good people actually doing some advice, but it's not as dangerously boring as it could have been. I don't know if I'm fighting a rearguard action on that one, and everyone horribly disagrees with me. But other thoughts, Lois, is that?
I'm just wondering how one would make them look. I mean, to distinguish them, I can sort of see good occupation, all right, coming in like, I don't know, a Pilates teacher, or something obviously energetic. But I don't know about what would you do with patience?
Deck of cards.
I thought about
But
it.
that's the opposite of good occupation.
Yeah.
Patience, a very slow mime artist. We've got to assume that the way that they're presented is there may be conventions for that, and how they're supposed to look. We'll have hundreds of years of morality playing in some form or other. So this is feeding off as well as feeding into ideas. Lynn.
As well, we are building a good citizen here. This tradition is really socially useful. First, we have meekness. Decenter yourself. The foundation of all of this is unselfishness. Is stop being self-interested. The next thing is to love God and love your neighbor, which I think is very closely allied with that first virtue. And next thing, get to work. Get to work. Do something useful, intellectually useful. Keep your mind and your hands occupied. So we're building good citizenship here. Somebody that's socially conforming and socially useful, as well as good.
Helen just put in the chat. I think it's very good advice. Just generally, get out, keep busy. Don't a little bit of patience goes a long way. It isn't actually, though it is connected to scripture and religious example, it isn't actually that preachy. In that sort of overt way, that it's still quite relatively subtle. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, one would have to go back through the whole play to see if there's a pattern, but certainly the first things that Meekness says are really just the opposite of what Pride was doing when he first came in, when he said, "Oh, I've been wanting to see this man that everybody's been talking about," and and I think Meekness does actually say, "Don't worry about what people say about you." So I don't know if there's such a matching all the way through between the vices and the virtues, but it is kind of interesting.
Right, Eric.
I was just going to say that the way I kind of imagine this is sort of like, I mean, like visually, is because we were talking about how we're going to tell them apart, is like sort of, the vices would be taking stuff away from the main, like, sort of from man, whereas like the virtues would probably bring stuff. I don't know, maybe not necessarily gifts, but like, I don't know, maybe like a shift or like a hat, or like sort of props that could be, or like, I don't know, like what's called not a lanyard, like the stuff they have at pageants and stuff, or something that could be like relevant to each virtue or whatever.
We do have similar sort of visual symbols that are brought on with some other plays. So I don't think that there's any reason why there aren't other additional signifiers thrown in. Yeah. We've got 2 more to go. I don't know if anyone's been counting. So how many we've done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, that makes 7. It's all good. So the next one I'm particularly interested in, because I think the next one, if we'd done this play a couple of months ago, this would have been a really helpful one to have done. Because we did a play called Liberality and Prodigality, and we spent a long time trying to figure out what the hell is liberality in the context of this play. And I think we're about to be given a really good demonstration of the meaning of liberality within that logic. That play's over 100 years later. I mean, that's possibly the latest pseudo morality play that we've looked at. So this what's coming up now is hopefully going to be very useful. It may not be. Could be terrible. Who knows? So we've got liberality coming up, and then another virtue following after that. So we've had good occupation exit. Man is left alone.
Yes, hardly. Not think not to the contrary. Sith it is to me so behoveful and necessary.
I am liberality, the virtue cardinal, by whom is confounded the sin of avarice. Whosoever lusteth on me to call, I am ready therein to give mine advice.
Sir, I pray you, in my most hearty wise, help to reform and order my mind.
First, thou must be sorry for the abusing of temporal goods before this day. Next, that I will advise thee before all thing, if thou hast wrongfully taken away any man's good, go without delay, and thereof to thy power make due restitution. For erst thou shalt have of thy sin no remission.
Why, trow ye that I shall not be excused by alms deeds of that offence?
No, hardly. Thou art greatly abused. Think not thereby to make recompense. For by that alms thou dost great offence and displeasure to God.
Why say ye so? Christ himself bade that we should alms do.
Yea, for God, but that should be due of well-gotten goods, else it is not.
Well, I assent gladly thereto, as in that one point I am fully taught, wit is nothing worth till it be dear bought. But what other amends shall I make? The foul sin of avarice to suage and slake.
Thou must have compassion, and also be liberal unto thy neighbor at his necessity.
I trow ye would have me to give away all and leave myself naught.
I mean not so, pardie, for that is waste and sinful prodigality. Take the midway betwixt them two, and flee the extremities howsoever thou do. Thou must thy worldly goods so employ in charitable deeds with due compassion, that thou mayest buy everlasting joy for the good intent of that distribution. Thou mayst also give them to thy damnation, as when thou dost it to win thereby praising of the people, or some other vain glory. For trust it well, thou must give a reckoning of all the goods that come to thine use, the high judge that knoweth all thing, to whom thou shalt thyself accuse, without any appeal or feigned excuse. He will be thine auditor in this case, from whom thou canst not hide thy face. There shalt thou openly show and confess how that goods came to thy possession, what mind and pleasure thou hadst in riches, and why thou hadst therein such affection, what alms deed or other good distribution, or how thou hast those goods wasted or abused. There it shall be known, it cannot be refused. Then, as I said to thee before, thou shalt receive after thy deserving joy, or else pain, to endure evermore.
Truly, this is a fearful thing.
Therefore, remember well my saying, mark well my counsel, and follow the same.
If I did not, I were greatly to blame.
And here liberality goeth out, and the 7th virtue abstinence, and the 8th one chastity comes in.
The remedy of gluttony I can well teach. I am ordained only for that intent.
not hear things.
Did you not hear that line?
I did not hear that line, sorry.
I did, but say it again anyway, Alan.
The remedy of gluttony I can well teach. I am ordained only for that intent.
And I have great need of such a leech. Your counsel to me is right expedient.
Sir, if ye lust to be my patient, and take such remedy as I shall devise, I shall make you whole of that sin on warrantise.
What is your name?
My name is Abstinence, and this other that cometh with me is called Chastity, or else Continence. It is his guise and his property to follow me wheresoe'er I be. Likewise as lechery, a deadly sore, followeth the beastly sin of gluttony evermore. Quia delicia sunt instrumentale voluptaris. But now to do that I came for. Against the sin of gluttony, the remedy is this. Use scarce a diet than thou didst before. Beware of superfluity and surfeit evermore. Take no more than sufficeth nature, nor of delicate meat set thou no store. Now have I said all that longeth to my cure.
And I must needs confirm the same. For, as he rehearsed now right well, glutton of hot meats and delicate feeding causeth sinful lusts in a man to swell. And over that, this is my counsel, eschew idleness before all thing, if thou wilt be chaste and clean of living. Flee also the company and the occasion of that sin, which is damnable. As soon as thou feelest any temptation, put it clean away by means convenable. Of all other sins it is most abominable. And soonest will thy soul in danger and blame. There be so great many sins annexed to the same. If thou list not for fear of damnation, this sin to forbear, then on that other side, do it from the love of thine own salvation. Think what rewards in heaven doth thee abide, which if thou live chaste cannot be denied. My wit sufficeth not to tell and express what joy thou shalt have for thy chaste cleanliness.
I thank you both for your advice, and now would I speak with repentance fain.
I can bring you to him on the best wise.
Then will I wait upon you twain, and after that I will come hither again, trusting that God will send me the grace to comfort my soul with ghostly solace.
And they go out, and the stage is empty, so reason cometh in.
I hear say, to my great joy and gladness, that according to my counsel and advice, this mortal creature doth well his business to correct and forsake all his old vice, and that he is in good way and likely to arise from the veil of sin, which is full of darkness, toward the contemplation of the light that is endless. Lo, sirs, are we not all much behold to our Maker for this great patience, which, notwithstanding our sins manifold in wherein we daily do him offence, yet of his merciful and great magnificence he doth not punish as soon as we offend, but suffereth in hope that we will amend. He suffereth a sinner sometime to endure a long life in honour and great prosperity. It is a thing that daily is put in Europe, and many greater danger escapeth he. Where good men perish, this may ye see, and all because he would him win, and have him to turn and forsake his sin.
And mankind returns.
Oh, here cometh he that I look for. Sir, have you done as I willed you to do?
Yea, that have I done, and what trow ye more? I've been with repentance also, which from my heart shall never go. For he brought me unto confession, and anon I was acquainted with heart's contrition. They advised and charged me to do satisfaction, and so I have done, to my best power.
Then thou art fully the child of salvation. Have good perseverance, and be not in fear. Thy ghostly enemy can put thee in no danger, and greater reward thou shalt therefore win than that he that never in his life did sin. And to the intent that thou mayest well persevere and continue in this way, or we depart hence by my counsel, let us by one accord sing together and pray with as humble devotion as we can or may, that we may have grace from sin thus to rise, as often as we fall, and let us pray this wise.
And then they sing some goodly ballad. Awesome.
All creatures that on earth. Yeah.
Thought we were going to do all things bright and beautiful, but I mean,
it's really interesting. At the end, we have this exit to go. We got repentance and confession, which is something that gets echoed in Every Man a little later. This idea of mankind going off and getting shriven. And before he dies, of course, got to remember, he's an old man. He's literally about to die. Happy days, happy. Maybe it's always look on the bright side of life. Maybe that's what they're singing at the end there. But it's a lovely ballad, a lovely thing. We got anti-gluttony, lust, with abstinence and chastity. So liberality is sort of the odd one out of the of the lot, of just going, well, just even don't do anything extreme. Just don't do anything extreme. That I found really interesting. Very slow fingers coming up there. It was like someone was out in cricket there. I'll go with Helen first.
Liberality really surprised me, because liberality wasn't about giving. The Lord loveth a generous giver, or whatever the phrase is.
Cheerful.
It was about doing right. I mean, what liberality says is there's no point in giving alms from ill-begotten gains. That gets you nowhere. You've got to make restitution first. I mean, what liberality is talking about is the man Colston in Bristol, who made an absolute mint out of mass murder in the slave trade. And he then endowed all sorts of charitable foundations in Bristol. And what liberality is saying is that this is utterly pointless.
Interesting.
It's also interesting that way liberality, because man says this sort of very naive thing, if I give everything away, I leave myself naught. And it's like liberality just, no, people say this all the time. It's very annoying. You if you give everything away, that's just as bad, because then you cannot function in society. It's like in a plane, if it's decompressing and you've got kids with you, put the mask on yourself first. It may seem counterintuitive, but you've got to do it. So he's sort of an adjunct to charity, and other elements, about the excesses and what you do with things. There's so many hands. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about liberality, though, is that he's Aristotelian. I mean, in Aristotle's Ethics, he actually says that liberality is the golden mean, really, between extravagance on the one hand and covetousness on the other. In other words, it's not really a Christian virtue, because Christianity tends to work in terms of these polar opposites. That's the sin and that's the virtue, whereas this is actually a mean between two bad extremes.
And it is interesting to say, because we have liberality elsewhere, and it's just the use of the word is slightly different. I mean, liberality lays out very nicely an explanation of what we mean by the word. So I'm looking at that as going, that's quite a useful speech we might use somewhere else. Lynn, then Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to kind of disagree that liberality is sort of one of these things is not like the others, because abstinence too says, I'm not telling you not to eat, I'm just telling you not to overeat. Of course, chastity, as it was defined, was, sexual relations in sanctified and sexual and socially acceptable circumstances, but that's not really very much emphasized in either of their speeches. So maybe I don't really disagree as much as I was about to, that liberality is a little different, a little more Aristotelian and less Christian.
Mm.
The thing that I thought of being a drama geek when Helen was talking about ill-gotten gains don't get you into heaven. I was actually thinking of a much later play in Major Barbara. The distiller.
What price salvation now?
Yeah. What price salvation now? You can't. And then when her father says, "Oh, I'll make it up to the even whatever 12 pounds here," and she says, "You can't buy your salvation for 6 pence here." So yeah, English society wrestling with that 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900, 400 years later. You can't make up for your past sins by buying your way into the position of philanthropist.
And yet so many institutions try really hard. So much whitewashing of reputations. It goes on all over. It's interesting because I was basically just going the anti-envy, the anti-pride, the anti-gluttony throughout, and liberality is the one who doesn't have an exact parallel. It's sort of an adjunct to several of the others. But it calls itself the cardinal virtue, virtue cardinal.
Mm-hmm.
So is the one who arranges how far you go. Sarah?
When we did, what was it, Liberality
and Prodigality.
And Prodigality, I remember it took us several hours to work out that liberality was actually moderation in all things.
Mm.
And yeah, this does just lay it out really, really simply and directly, and usefully. But I mean, also, if you think about it, that thing of moderation in all things, you can apply it to like the whitewashing, to the Colston way of behaving, because actually, if you weren't such an evil bastard in the first place, you wouldn't have to go out of your way to endow charities and do all this stuff to try and rescue your reputation and your soul later on in your life. So in a weird way, on a grand scale, this whole thing of like moderation and all things, it does actually fit. It does work.
Helen.
Yes, you were saying that liberality doesn't have a counterpart, an opposite, but isn't it covetise?
Do we have covetise somewhere else? Yeah, that was. Oh yeah, no, maybe it is anti-avarice. Yes, or maybe I already had it down as avarice. Ah.
I don't know. I mean,
have I just miscounted? Maybe I've just miscounted. Maybe it's as simple as that. I'll go through that again. Lois, while I do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is the opposite of covetise, but when he says he's a cardinal virtue, he's the only cardinal virtue we get here. I mean, the others are, what, justice, fortitude, and temperance, I think. And they, again, they represent balance, don't they? I mean, justice actually holds a balance, and prudence, that's another one. I mean, they all represent some kind of moderation. Now, I think it's interesting that we've got a Renaissance humanist who is kind of taking for granted, I think, that you can bring a cardinal virtue into an essentially religious scheme of things.
Yes, I'm only counting 7 actually, so must have miscounted somewhere. So yeah. I mean, we have got fragmentary play. We haven't done it in this room, but we have done it on the podcast on the play literally called The Four Cardinal Virtues, and Temperance and Humility, which is potentially a fragment from a very similar or earlier version of the same play. So we do have text playing around with these ideas of virtues. Eric?
I was going to say 2 things. Firstly, we talk about moderation in all things, but then reason actually says it's better to you're going to end up better if you repent than someone who has never sinned in his life. And also, my second point is that they're all promising rewards after. It's not like just do it because it's good for you, or I mean, it's like for the sake of doing it. It's like it's good for your soul in the afterlife. It's not necessarily, it's not out of the good of your own sort of. It's self-interest, basically, in my view.
Sarah.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that, but I mean, moderation doesn't imply that you shouldn't ever sin, because it's moderation.
True,
It's like nobody's perfect. Everybody's fallible. Everybody, you know, like you're going to sin. You're gonna. I won't use that phrase. You're gonna make mistakes, but the whole point is if you moderate yourself, you're never going to go into the excess of the, you know, the things that lead people to be truly evil or truly awful or truly you know, like amassing piles of wealth or whatever, because you're going to regulate yourself, you're going to moderate yourself.
Yes, it's one of those elements that you know, if you lead a relatively good life and then you know, get properly shriven at the end and repent, then you're fine. But you know, generally doing good things is a good thing, and the general emphasis on all these anti-vices is generally to do more good.
Yeah.
But also, let's thinking about the society of the room at the time. You know, it's the case of there's potentially quite a few people in the room who have the means, the wherewithal to sin quite extensively. You know, not necessarily the leader of the household, but you know, his friends and his guests and his you know, there's potentially a lot of people here who this could be applicable to. You know, it could even be applicable to Morton himself. So you know, there might be a subtle hint here. You know, if the shoe fits, might not. It might just be purely generic. So we're very much into extra time. So I'm just going to quickly go around the room for final thoughts about the play overall. This session, the bits we've been working on. We'll start with Alan. Any final thoughts?
I must admit, I found the bit after the screeching U-turn rather less satisfying than the bits that preceded it. I think that would be my candidate for blue pencil if one were to stage this. I think the point is not only rammed home, it's sort of knocked home about 17 different ways, and I think you would probably lose a modern audience.
Yeah, it's interesting when you put sermonizing at the end of the play, because it's almost like they're going, well, they can't leave now. It's,
well, only if you promise them post-show drinks.
Well, it is in the context of reveling of various degrees. So yeah, it's interesting. I think my objection to the ending is not so much actually its length or its what it's doing. Is actually, I think there's enough character going on. I think it's just the fact that the play is actually very piecemeal in its dramaturgy. When you talk about a U-turn, I think you're right in the sense that, you know, we're promised this battle, the battle never happens, and then he just comes on and repents, and that's a bit unsatisfying. Rather than actually the repentance itself, it's more how we get here. You know, it's the journeys we made on the way, and we don't. It just happens. Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very intelligent play. The ending would somehow need to be made more colorful, possibly by the visual side of it. I don't know, the way these various virtues look, maybe what they do with man, something like that, maybe even the use of music. It is a pity that there isn't a battle between the virtues and the vices. I mean, there's usually a bit more conflict than this in this type of play. But it does raise interesting questions. I mean, the fact that we've been talking so much about it, you know, particularly that question of liberality, it reminds me of things, somebody or other has written a book arguing that the best, if you really want to do good in the world, the best thing is to make as much money as you can so that you can then give it away, which, you know, leaves out completely the question of how you make it. So.
Yes. Yeah, it's that thing. Yes, we've got the earlier play Castle of Perseverance, which literally does battle, and you know, there's all, you know, and I think the big problem is it promises a battle. If it didn't promise a battle, I wouldn't probably have a problem.
Yeah.
But as it's promised it and then doesn't deliver, that's a bad mistake.
Actually, maybe what happens is that, I mean, if one could somehow show that there is no battle because the vices are also totally incompetent, that most of them have left and, you know, they just don't turn up. I mean, you could possibly dramatize that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of tidying to do, but maybe that corner can be turned. Elizabeth, final thoughts?
Yes, I enjoyed the play. I think it really hanged together quite well, considering how many different virtues and vices that we came across. I like the opening speeches for each of the vices and the virtues. I really enjoyed those opening speeches, and I liked the long speeches as well. I really enjoyed those. I like man's journey through the narrative, and how man falls and then gets lifted up again, and how man has interactions with all the virtues and the vices as well. And I was really interested in the comparisons between this and prodigality and liberality and the Three Ladies of London. I think compared to those, they go quite well together. I wouldn't say it was better than them or worse, but I say they go quite well together in space. That could be some sort of cycle.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we are able to detect so much of this in plays that are so much later, even though they're doing quite different shape of the overall story that they're telling, that we're still getting that sense of connection. Absolutely. Sarah, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Lois's use of the word intelligent was a really good one. This is a really intelligent play, and I did like it. To be fair, I missed about 5 minutes of the end because I had to leave, and then I came back again. But so I don't know, but I'm assuming I didn't miss any major. Any startling dramatic turn of events there.
Satan turned up, did a dance.
Yeah,
it was great. It was fab.
Lost mother appeared.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, the battle, I think what Lois said would work. Like if the battle actually then becomes between the vices, if they're about to go into battle but then they can't because they effectively all turn on each other and start ripping each other to shreds, and if they kind of rip man to shreds in the process, and then the virtues come in and actually tend to him and kind of piece him back together. I don't know, it's like so often, well, I guess this is the structure of a morality play. Everybody is told what to do, like Tamara said earlier. It's like a classroom situation where it would be really nice if you actually saw them doing what they're talking about. But I guess that doesn't happen for a long time yet. But it, for the sort of play it is, I mean, it is a lot more sophisticated than some of the later ones we've looked at. So, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, it's clearly not what this play is trying to do, and I suspect is that they don't have room in the hall to do a pitch battle. They have a room in the hall for a few people to talk to each other and stand very still. I don't think that, because we have earlier plays where they do show everything. We keep mentioning Castle of Perseverance. That is a very physically active play that is showing as well as telling, and so it's really interesting. The perhaps the context of where it's being performed means you can't do certain actions. Sarah again.
But I mean, in a way, if you think about it, it makes no sense. Although it's kind of juicy dramatically, it makes no sense for there to be a battle between the virtues and the vices, because the virtues are just basically fighting is not what they're about. So kind of thing. It would like for them to actually, for the vices to turn on themselves and each other and on man. I mean, that kind of sort of going back to what Alan was saying earlier about the vices being like the gang. And sensuality being the boss. I mean, that would be something that you could stage in a fairly small space, with them all just. It's not like a big pitched battle. It's like a small gang of people turning on each other. And,
I mean, it is true. What this play is demonstrating is that the evil side basically collapse.
Yeah,
we see that he's not turning up. He's gone off. He's gone off in despair. Envy's turned several people off. Nobody's there. Nobody's turning up. And that what happens off stage is there's this nice parley where man just goes up to reason. You could demonstrate that in sort of you know, as a dumb show. I mean, it's interesting what you're talking about, the weirdness of virtues and vices fighting. You know, that's basically comes from out of very early Christian dogma, where it is so violent that, you know, if we talk, this is more about stuff to do with Castle of Perseverance, but one of the texts that's thought to be sort of deriving from is called the Psychomachia, which is sort of reads in the style of modern jihadist infomercial. I mean, it is unbelievably violent. I thought I'd try and translate it as a Latin exercise, and I just went, no, I'm not. This is horrible. I'm just not reading this, and I put it away. So, you know, this is sort of, you know, maybe the later compromise where people are sort of moving away from that pitch battle and trying to do it in a more intellectual way, perhaps. It's turning too much of a general discussion, but I'll go to Lois briefly.
Oh, well, I'm not sure, but doesn't, in the Castle of Perseverance, don't the virtues simply throw roses down on the vices and conquer them that way? I mean, that's a way of dealing with the idea that you can't really have the virtues behaving like thugs.
Yeah, you don't get any of the bone cracking and the want and the pierce and all the stuff that you get. Yeah. Yes, it's a lot more clever and funny, actually. I think I'm really looking forward to doing Castle of Perseverance. I'm just going to keep mentioning it because it's one we really need to do, and it's fab. Helen, final thoughts?
Yeah, I really have a visceral hatred of allegories. However, I was agreeably surprised by how engaging I found the arguments in this afternoon's session. And I found in it lessons for my own life. To be honest, in the current situation in which I and others find themselves, I thought it is remarkably good. One of the staging things that I kept thinking was that it would be nice if the various vices also played their opposite virtues. So that sloth, what's the opposite of sloth? I forget.
Good occupation.
Good occupation. So sloth takes off the sloth disguise, and good occupation comes forth from out of it. It was just a thought I had. Whether it would work or not, I don't know.
I think it's a very reasonable element if we're assuming that there is some doubling going on in this, that might be a logical way of looking at it. I have no objection to that at all. I think that's fab. And, you know, the idea that we get a play by a lawyer and there's some good argument in it. You see, trust is training. Trust is training. Eric, final thoughts?
I actually made some notes because I was like, I'm going to forget this by the time we get around to this. Yeah, I think, like, firstly, it's a good play in terms of, like, you know, the way it's structured, the way it sort of functions. And it kind of, like, I think if we'd read it through entirely, like, it would have actually felt a lot faster compared to, because obviously, because it rhymes, it just, like, trips off the tongue, especially reason, envy, all that stuff. It's just, like, very, very fast. And also there's sort of, I was going to say about the virtues, it reminded me of being in university where they're kind of, you know, you go to a class and your professor sort of goes, yeah, you're kind of, well, you know, this material is very important and you have to study it. It's all very important. And, you know, this class is the most important class you'll ever do in your life. And then you go to the next class, which is obviously about something else. And it's like, this is the most important class you'll ever do. And everything's going to be on the exam. And it's like that, you know, pop quiz next week, that kind of thing. That's what the virtues reminded me of. Whereas the vices don't really care very much. They're just like, yeah, do whatever you want, but I'm here. Yeah, and also on the other side, flip side, I was thinking that it doesn't make sense for the virtues not to fight, because angels have swords in all the iconography and, like, religious texts and stuff. Okay, obviously I've not read that much religious, sort of, like, that many religious texts, but it's like, if you think about it, like Angel Gabriel or I don't know, Michael or whatever, they have weaponry. like even in Orthodox churches, you can see them, like, you know, the glorious flaming sword of St. George and that kind of stuff, which is obviously like a mortal who's been canonized and so on. But it's still part of the religious canon.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we have big flaming swords guarding the tree of life, because, you know, having eaten of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, if we had the tree of life as well, we'd be as powerful as the gods. Anyway, Tamara, final thoughts from you.
Well, obviously, I've only seen, read, heard the last third, but yes, I would very much agree that it feels like a very intelligent play, and I feel like there are a lot of subtleties that would come out if you workshopped it, in terms of performance. And I think a lot of the big chunks of text, the big speeches we have with the virtues, if we workshopped it, if you know, something would come up in rehearsal that would really bring that to life. And I made notes too, because I always write stuff down, because otherwise I don't know what to say when it comes to final thoughts. I wrote down physical gags, because there are a lot of things that characters seem to say in reaction to a gag that's being made that isn't in the stage directions at all. So there is stuff that definitely, again, would come out when you workshop it. And yeah, it just fascinates me in that way, in that it's got these subtleties that you kind of need to discover.
Yeah, no, I think we haven't this session really talked about the theatricality of it all, which Medwall is really interested in, especially for all of us who are doing the Fulgence and Lucrece sessions, where, my God, it gets meta. You know, this is a man who likes his theatrical jokes, so I think you're absolutely right on that. Lynn, final thoughts?
Yes, well, I think again, intelligent is really a great adjective for this text, and it's very instructive if you're interested at all in the history of the early modern period and the literature of the early modern period. It's really interesting to see someone with legal training writing for an audience where the most prominent member has religious training, and they are still trying to work through what it means to lead a good life. That's an intellectual preoccupation of that stratum of society, and that the morality tradition was used more than just to sort of browbeat ordinary people into fitting in to society in a useful way. That, like, what does it mean to lead a good life? Well, how do we navigate being human? It is something that was on people's minds. And so it's really interesting to see what some of the tentative answers to those questions are. But just for me personally, I would have no interest in staging this as an on the boards production. I think it's too talky.
I have to say, with both this and Fulgence and Lucrece, they are both plays you would have to almost do as part of a recreation night where you have a feast. You know, you make it as part of an event. It's not a play for a playhouse. It's not designed for a playhouse in any stretch or imagine. I mean, it could be done that way, but I think it's as much about the event. I mean, the one note I've got that I haven't mentioned earlier is the bit when Sensuality and Envy are talking about, that some people might think this is a small household, and of course they're looking around. It's Lambeth Palace, and the place is crammed probably, and it's this is no, it's not a small household at all. Boom boom. So that being crammed in with lots of people, where there's food and there's drink and buildings, even if we can't do a proper context and set it in context, I think getting the audience to turn up dressed in period costume and making that part of the ticketing for the show, and not only that, we could charge exorbitant ticket prices, and do it in a historic building, and I think in that sense I think this would actually work very well. and I'm actually not looking at it in terms of blue pencil. I mean, it's not a short play by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that there is something about the way it's paced. It's got an interval, so it's not like, it's already got an interval in place. So, it's going to be, a long session, but, they get food, they get wine, they get, all the comforts of home. Alan, very briefly.
Yeah, the only way you could do that in present circumstances is set it with a grouse shooting party.
Yeah, absolutely. You can shoot your own dinner for the evening. Yes, sadly, this is something that's not going to happen for a long time, but it's just a basic plague risk. Helen, yes.
In between the two halves, you would have to have a small banquet brought on.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it's a matter of we would have a banquet before, we'd have a banquet in the middle, and we'd have a banquet afterwards.
No, ordinary food, but the banquet is fancy sweet, spun sugar creations.
March pain.
Yes. Exotic fruit.
So, and
bar, because that's where you make your money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The mead will be competitively priced.
Well, also in the...
Have you ever had mead? It's revolting.
I like mead.
No, it's not.
Different kinds.
Well, maybe I've had bad mead.
Yeah.
about?
After the
was
first couple of
bad.
glasses, it doesn't matter. I did actually do a semi-historical recreation event where there was far too much mead available. Trust me, it did not help the concentration of the room when it came to the theatrical presentation. So maybe moderate that in the early course of the evening. Eric, very last thought.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that in Fulgence and Lucrece, you as you know, the guy actually says we're not paying for the food, so enjoy yourselves.
Yes, well, unless we get a very wealthy patron to basically hire us in for the day, that line might have to be adjusted. So yes, we have finished Nature. We are in the process of finishing Fulgence and Lucrece, which is sort of the sister show. If this is a religious morality drama, Fulgence and Lucrece is a secular comedy, as well as a debate ideas play, and is so far a hoot. So I have to say, so far, the general, at least certainly my opinion of Henry Medwall has been vastly improved this week. Not uncritically, there are problems with Nature, but on the whole, I've enjoyed myself. All that remains is to say thank you to all the readers today and say goodbye.
Bye.